American Top 40.
Another debut song on AT40. At number 36, Bette Midler. Born in New Jersey and raised in Hawaii. This is Do You Want to Dance?
Casey's Coast to Coast.
Now, here's the current hit by the artist who used to be the featured singer at a club where her audience consisted mainly of hundreds of men who were wearing no clothes. She first hit New York in 1965, fresh out of high school. A little Jewish girl from Hawaii with big hopes of becoming a great Broadway actress. 2 years later, she'd got herself into the chorus of Fiddler on the Roof, then worked her way into the role of Tzeitel, one of Tevye's daughters. But after 3 years of Fiddler, she decided she wasn't getting anywhere as an actress. So after the final curtain, each night she'd try singing for no pay at first at the small clubs around town. It was at one of those clubs that the owner of a well-known Manhattan Turkish bath and nightclub saw her and booked her into his establishment as the main attraction. So for a long time, she sang to male customers who sat around wearing nothing but towels and waterproof watches. They loved her. And that was her springboard to the big time of show business. At number 17 this week, here's Bette Midler. You know, during the rock era, only a handful of singers have ever received Oscar nominations for Best Actor. And fewer still have received that nomination while they had hit songs in the top 40. In fact, that fancy maneuver has been pulled off only 3 times. The first time was back in 1956 when Frank Sinatra was nominated for an Oscar for his role in The Man with the Golden Arm, while his song Flowers Mean Forgiveness was in the top 40. He didn't win. Then in 1974, Barbra Streisand was nominated for an Academy Award for her role in The Way We Were, while her hit single of the film's theme song was in the top 40. She didn't win either. Well, this week, the third singer to be nominated for the Best Actor Oscar is in the countdown. She's been nominated for her leading role in The Rose. And this talented lady is Bette Midler. She's at number 35 with a song from that picture. Here's Oscar nominee Bette Midler, When a Man Loves a Woman.
When he held me in his arms, when he held me in his arms and said, baby, baby, baby.
Number 28.
Bette Midler grew up in Honolulu, but her idea of paradise was New York City. So at the age of 20, she used the money she made as an extra in the 1966 film Hawaii and flew off to the Big Apple to become a star. Now, flying 8 notches up the chart, here's Bette with Wind Beneath My Wings.
CT40 with Casey Kasem.
CT40 originates in Hollywood. Well, 9 years ago, Bette Midler went to number 1 with the title song from The Rose, a movie that proves she was as great an actress as she is a singer. In fact, Bette's been so busy making movies that she hasn't had time to make records. But now, she's back in our survey with a song from the soundtrack of her latest film, Beaches. Soaring 4 notches to 15, here she is with Wind Beneath My Wings.
Count them down on CT40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to the latest hit for a singer-turned-actress who opened her first solo tour dressed as a hot dog. It was 20 years ago that Bette Midler put together her first American tour, an extravaganza that had her dressed up like Carmen Miranda, a mermaid, and at the start of the show, like a hot dog. Bette figured it would be just great to walk out on stage dressed like a wiener. Unfortunately, the costume wasn't finished until the day of her first performance, and unbeknownst to Bette, the crazy glue that held it together hadn't dried yet. So when Bette pulled the hot dog outfit on during the dress rehearsal, it immediately stuck to her wild red hair, and there was no way to get it off. Of course, Bette could have tried pulling the suit off by force, but that would have probably left her bald. So instead of going through a rehearsal, she had to wait patiently for her hairdresser to show up and cut her loose. Well, Bette eventually got out of that red hot, and then got right back into it for the show. And as she expected, the audience relished it when she walked on stage that night dressed like an Oscar Mayer. That was 20 years ago. Bette's been wowing them ever since, on stage, on screen, and on record. And this week, her latest record, which comes from the soundtrack of her movie Beaches, is flying high at number 9 in our countdown.
Casey Kasem, Coast to Coast.
I'm Casey Kasem on Casey's Top 40. Now we're up to the latest hit for a superstar who was the shame of her dancing class when she was a child. She was a complete failure, but that's what started her on the road to stardom. Bette Midler grew up in Honolulu, and like a lot of little girls, she was sent by her folks to dancing class. Only because this was Hawaii, the type of dancing that she was taught was the hula. Bette says she was an utter failure as a hula student. She couldn't remember any of the steps. She couldn't figure out what to do with her hands. And so her teacher would always hide Bette way behind all the other kids so she wouldn't have to deal with her. Well, one day the time came for the class to show off their stuff in front of their parents. And for the recital, the teacher insisted that the little girls in the class wear their hair pulled back tight in a bun like ballet dancers. Bette says she pulled her hair back so tight she could barely open her eyes. All she could see was a blur, and when she went on stage in front of all the parents, she couldn't see a thing. So she just stumbled around on the stage, and eventually she wound up in the front row instead of in the back where she was supposed to be. Not knowing the steps, Bette started doing whatever came to mind. And she told us, quote, "The audience roared with laughter and they cheered me on. I had no idea what I was doing, so I just danced. I was in the spotlight for the first time, and I wasn't about to go back." Well, that was Bette's first taste of fame, and she liked it a lot. So much so that she's done whatever she could to stay in the spotlight ever since. This week, Bette Midler's latest showstopper climbs 8 notches to number 16 on Casey's Top 40. It's a song from her album Other People's Lives, a song of brotherhood, a prayer for peace called From a Distance.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. We're counting down the biggest hits in the USA.
Number 12.
Climbing 4 notches now is the former senior class president of Radford High School in Honolulu, Hawaii. She's Bette Midler, and this is a song from her CD, Some People's Lives.
Casey's Top 40.
For Casey Kasem, I'm Mark Elliott. These are the week's biggest hits from 40 to 1, and we're counting them down. And now we're up to a red-headed superstar who got her first big break on Broadway, starring as a Russian peasant in Fiddler on the Roof. You might be tempted to guess that has to be Barbra Streisand, but Barbra never played in Fiddler. The musical that brought her fame was I Can Get It For You Wholesale. Instead, it was Fiddler on the Roof that first brought us the divine Miss M, Bette Midler. When people talk about Bette's career, they often describe her stint as a singer in a men's bathhouse on the Upper West Side of New York City, and her outrageous stage shows. But what's not often mentioned is the time before all of that, when Bette was trying to make it in musicals. After a string of bit parts, both on and off Broadway, she finally landed the role of Tzeitel in Fiddler on the Roof, the smash musical based on life in a small Russian village in the late 19th century. Back in the late 1960s, Bette spent more than 2 years in that play. Every night she'd go on stage to sing show-stopping tunes like the classic Matchmaker, Matchmaker. And as the young Russian girl, she'd beg her father in the play to please, please not make her marry the town's rich butcher, and instead to let her marry her one true love, the poor tailor. Bette Midler says, quote, "It was good steady work, and though it wasn't the real me, it gave me the freedom to spend my days working on the divine Miss M. Even today, it's good to know that if all else fails, I can always do Fiddler at dinner theaters." Well, the way her career is going these days, she won't be forced to do that anytime soon. The divine Miss M is a big star, both on record and the silver screen. This week, her latest top 10 is survey song number 35 on Casey's Top 40. From the CD Some People's Lives, here's Bette Midler and From a Distance.
Casey's Top